Hey everybody, my name's Will. I'm the old entrepreneur. Been buying and selling, deal making, opening businesses, closing businesses, losing businesses for the last 45, 50 years now. Well, probably 40 years. I was about 20. I'm 60 now. But still smoke, drink Diet Cokes, work hard every day. Always chasing that dream. Uh, Gonna start a little series on my experience, strength, and hope in the being an entrepreneur and trying to, just maybe pass my knowledge on to somebody else. So, with that being said, let's get started out. I started on when I was in high school, or really junior high, picking up Coke bottles, or maybe even younger than that, probably 10 or 12. Uh, Put that old cigarette out, nasty. Need to quit these damn things. I started picking up Coke bottles. I'd find stuff on the side of the road, and, I'd take it and I'd flip it. I was probably one of the first flippers there ever was. If you go back and look, people didn't know what vintage stuff was back in the late 60s, early 70s when I was a kid. More of the 70s. They say we're in the Jones generation is what we are now. They always call us baby boomers. Now they've come up with something else where we kind of fended for ourselves, which is there's a lot of truth in it. But I always had that spark to want to be be an entrepreneur. I didn't even know what entrepreneur was. I was about 18. Somebody called me an entrepreneur. I said, "What's that?" I didn't even know what it was. I just knew I wanted to make money. But as I got older, I was just bound and determined to work for myself. I got out of high school, worked in the beer business. Was a milkman for a while. Worked on towboats. I worked offshore. And just nothing, even though there was good money, it just never was, what I was looking for. I was looking for that independence. And that's what entrepreneurship is you're the first one to work, you're the last one to leave, and the last one to get paid, by no doubt. So that's happened to me more than once. You learn how to finagle and make the money work. It's been a long time out there just doing it, and figured I had one guy tell me, said, "Man, I ain't never seen anybody could shit $10,000 like you could." I always thought that was pretty funny, maybe I can help y'all not make some of the mistakes that I've made in the past, Like I said, my first real venture was fixing PEX and windshields. This is probably in the early 90s, I guess, I'd go, somebody call, I'd go fix their windshield. I had a little drill and had all the setup and everything. I'll never know what happened to all of it, but I ended up buying a Harley Davidson motorcycle for about $800-900 back then with $20 bills, from where I just I do cash, I was still working a regular job, but working in an oil refinery at that time, and working swing shift, and ended up working. I'd be off half a day. I love that. If I had to work in some kind of industry, I'd want to work that evening shift because you could still get a lot done in the mornings, and not be too home and have to sleep in and when you got off. So I did hate that shift work though. It changed every 7 days, and it was miserable, hard on your body, even for a young guy. I don't know how these guys do it. So, but then I did that. I left that job and I went into the double cola business. It was a heavy 20-ounce soda pop, and worked out of a van first. Then I worked out of a box truck, and then I eventually got a beverage truck, and I did pretty good. It was hard work. I mean, those bottles were heavy. You put 5 or 6 of those cases on a hand truck and roll them up in the little country stores. I had to drive a lot. But we we made it work. I ended up getting out of that and going. That's when I became a milkman, and I that was some hard work. I've done some hard things in my life, but that was probably one of the hardest. Is you had to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You had to go out, and you had to run your route, and then I ran my little town. I ran from the main drag north to the county line, and then I ended up working. I had a boat store that fed the river boats that came by, and they wouldn't even tell me if there was a contest because they knew I'd win it. And I won contest, didn't even know there was a contest, so I just loaded those people up. I mean, they were going through the milk, so we lost that account, and I said, y'all gonna compensate my pay? Because that only took about probably 6 hours a week for that one stop, and I'm still working 70 hours a week back in those days, working all the grocery stores and what have you. And they said, no, we can't do that, and we can give you some more stops. Well, I don't need more stops. I need more money per sale, and they wouldn't do it. So I left that and went back into the beer business and sold Coors beer. And east of the Mississippi, you talking about a hard job. I've heard every story about Coors beer being smuggled across Louisiana and Texas that people brought in by plane, cattle trailers, then they brought Coors across the Mississippi and couldn't give that shit away, But it is good beer. It's I don't drink anymore. 10 years in the beer business will get you a seat in AA if you ain't careful, So I am in recovery, and I've been sober almost 29 years, to be 30 years this year, so without a drink or a drug. So for that, I'm grateful. But I do a little YouTube channel says you ain't got the guts to stay sober. So anybody who's out there needs to talk about drinking, I'll be more than happy to help you out any way I can. I said after I left the beer business, I opened up some tobacco stores and built it, and they will come. Actually, I opened up a store while I was still in the beer business, and hired a guy to run it, and it was a cheap beer, cheap cigs. We were in a terrible location. There was no parking. It was on a busy corner. Everybody knew about us, but nobody could stop because there was nowhere to park. There was a real estate office next door, and it just went round and round, And so I left the beer business, and I rented an old Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, one of the first ones here in Vicksburg, and build it, and they would come. Cheap beer, cheap cigarettes. Well, I'd been in the beer business. I knew what everybody was selling their beer for. They were making 25-30% on it. So I came in about 18%, and I had the cheapest beer in town, and we had cheap cigarettes. Cigarettes were $1.50 a pack then, and man, it was some money flowing through that place. Been a good spot for being a bookie, There was so many people coming through there. But we ended up did that, and then one day a guy walked in, and he says, you need to be in the pager business. I said, you need to quit smoking that dope. I don't know nothing about pagers. He said, oh, you'll do fine. Before that guy left, he sold me $500 worth of pagers, set me up on an old DOS system to activate them. And so as people would come in to the tobacco stores, hey, man, you need a pager, and next thing you know, I wish that business had never gone south, and it was the industry went south. It wasn't us, and it was. I bought the number for $1.50, $2, and I charged $8-9 for it. And these kids would come in. I need nationwide. Okay, sure. I'd hook them up on local Mississippi, I said, man, I was in Jackson. My pager didn't work. Oh, it must be something with the system, And they didn't need that at all. And but yeah, that was. We ended up with about 5,000 customers, and then kept getting broken into in the packing ships. I mean, not the packing ship. In the tobacco business, they drive the car in and steal the cigarettes. So it was a nightmare. My insurance came up and said, hey, you've been broken into many times, we can't cover you. And I couldn't get it. If I got insurance, it cost so much money, it wasn't worth using. So I shut down the tobacco business. I ended up with 3 different stores at one time, so a total of 3 stores, and we did pagers out of all of them. So cheap beer, cheap cigarettes, and had employees stole from me, and the whole works. But we were able to make some money out of that. So I went strictly into pager business and tried to get into cell phone business, and that's very difficult. Even back then, it was difficult to get signed up for to sell phones. But it was we ended up doing pretty good. We worked under a couple of different people, and we sold their Suncom was one of them. And then they turned into AT&T, and we had a good little run on it. But the problem with a phone was you sell somebody a phone, and they turn around and they go and don't pay the bill after a month. They charge you back the commission plus the phone. And it's the same way in the satellite business, which we did that too. I'll get that in a second. So eventually, I had a couple corporate accounts on pagers, and one of them called me up and said, "Hey, we need to turn in a couple of these pagers. Your service is great. You take care of all our needs." I said, "But we're using cell phones." And I saw that as writing on the wall. So I went around to every one of my competitors, said, "Look, I'm getting out. I'm going to do something different." I didn't tell them anything. I thought the business was going to flop, and they turned around, and I ended up selling those customers for about $8 a number, which is 1 month service. So, but I had right at 5,000. I messed up by not selling all of them. Because you had a churn rate where a guy come in and get a pager from me 3 or 4 months, and then he'd get behind, he'd go do it in another place, so your churn was pretty high, especially with young people that didn't realize it was affecting their credit and all that. So, but we turned around, and I ended up selling those, and I had about probably 300 or 400 of them that nobody wanted, and I just had to send them all a text. "Hey, we're shutting down. Need to go get another number somewhere else. If you want the same number, go pay up your bill somewhere else, and you'll get hooked up." And I got out of that and kind of goofed around a little bit, and I ended up getting in the satellite business. And that was the easiest thing I ever sold, was satellites. I would turn around. I could be in a convenience store, say, "Hey man, what kind of TV you got?" And they say, "Oh, I got a Sony." I said, "No, you got cable, you got satellite." "Oh, I got cable." Everybody hated the cable company. I kid you not. Everybody hated it. So I said, "You got a debit card?" And they go, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, I can get your satellite set up today if you need to." So we ended up doing that, and we were blowing and going. We were putting out. I go put out 4 or 5 satellites, set them up, do them everything. Back then we didn't have all walkie-talkies or anything, so I'd have 2 flip phones. And I'd put one inside the house by the receiver and turn the TV on. And I'd get out on the dish and hold that phone up, and I would twist that dish. Now you could hear go beep, and that man was dead on. It tightened that signal down. Those people watching TV, tell them how to use it and all that. One time I was at this house, and a lady had this little Chihuahua. I guess it's Chihuahua. It's a little Taco Bell dog, and that son bitch didn't do nothing but yap the whole time I was there. And she said, "Oh, don't worry, it's never bit anybody." By the time she said that dog reached up, bit me square in my ass. Then I had on those thick Carhartt pants, and his teeth got stuck in. So all 4 legs, he's still barking. All 4 legs are doing this, and I spun around. I said, "Oh, he said he didn't bite anybody," and I could see him in the corner of my eye going around with my pant. When I turned, he said, "Oh my God, my dog, my dog." She never asked how I was. She's more worried about her dog, which is people and dogs are. They're pretty tight with their dogs, And so, but I charged her for the pants when she left. It didn't hurt the pants. I think I probably still got those pants. I don't know if I do or not. But yeah, we did that, and then we started pre-wiring houses. That led into pre-wiring houses, and for TV and telephone. I was riding down the road one day and had an epiphany. So how could I turn around? How could I get more sales? And I said, I'll start wiring these houses. They're building. This little building boom is going on. This is probably 03, 04, sometime in that area. It was over it was past the 2000 year, and So I went and talked to this old contractor. He said, well, yeah, if you do that, you got to do the telephone and the TV and the alarm. I didn't know nothing about telephone and certainly didn't know anything about alarms. But, I'm pretty smart and I'm an entrepreneur. I got good spirit, I can figure out problems. So I called up ADT and said, hey, man, y'all need somebody to sell alarms over in my little town. They said, oh, yeah, we'd love to have you. Come over, we'll give you a little orientation, kind of tell you what we're doing. I said, okay. So I go over there and do that. And I said, hey, man, I got a couple pre-wires that need done. Can y'all, can I do them? Do I get a commission on it? They didn't even have to pay me a commission on it. I would have done it just to watch the guy, So the guy comes over, I meet him over there, kind of just hanging out, I am watching everything he does. I watched him do one house, and I said, yeah, I'll call you on that next one. I went and did the next one myself. And I went to the electrical parts house, and I said, man, I need to run some telephone. How hard is this? It's 2 wires. I said, oh, I can figure that out. When I got out of that business, I could splice a 610 line, or with a 610 tool, that's where you did 25 pair at a time, and you splice them together into a block. So I really taught myself a whole bunch of stuff. Had a couple of those tools too. I don't know. I sold them all out. So one day I'm riding down the road, and I passed where they're building a apartment complex, and I said, hey, I need to go in there. And I said, oh, they're not gonna mess with any local Joe. I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And man, that ate my gut up for about a week. So finally I go back down there. Remember the guy like it was yesterday. I walked in, I said, hey, I'm here to do the TV and telephone. He's like, oh, I already got somebody to do that. A guy named Bernie, crazy, old drinker, And he says, you do alarms? I said, well, hell yeah, I do alarms. He goes, well, go down there and give me an idea what it's going to cost me per apartment, per unit. There was like 300 units in the apartment complex. And I said, okay, I can do that. So I went down there and I looked, and it was simple. There was you didn't have to drill through any floor joists. It was all prefab sitting on top of each other. And you had to do the door, the front door, the side door, the window, and there was probably 2 or 3 more windows in the house, and you had to run a power wire. So it was like you just color-coded everything to that one. And then you put a box in the wall, you put a blank plate over it. If they wanted an alarm, they called you. So we did that. I went in there and told him I can do it for that. He goes, oh, well, that sounds good. Can you put that in writing? And I said, yeah, you got a computer? Yeah, I was just going to sit there and write him the quote right there. Me and him hit it off right at that point. He goes, no, he says, you got insurance? I said, well, no, I'm kind of independent, just put in satellites and pre-wire a few houses. But if you got somebody you can work on, we can use their insurance. I said, all right, so I went and got a buddy of mine. We did that. We went to... So he got set up, and he got me set up, and we ran it all under him. I had to give him 10%. So, but while I was there, 2 things happened. One, I got hooked up with a electrical contractor that his guys hated doing the telephone, and that's right up my alley, And so I gave him a excellent deal on that first one and paid for the wire. Probably lost money on that first one, so but I don't know. So many damn lines in there, and so we and then the cable company was needing to put wire the apartments for the cable, and the guy Bernie called me up to the office one day and said, hey, go out to the cable company, tell them if they want cable in this wall, they better give you the wire and let you go and wire this building. We're picking sheetrock, and they're not going to have any cable in here, and it's going to be a nightmare. So I go up to the cable company, talk to an old guy named Bo, and he was from Texas, and he liked to hear himself talk. And we talked, and he knew who I was. He knew I was selling satellites. I was in direct competition with him. But he ended up, I didn't even know what to charge for a TV drop. He said, well, we're paying about $14, $15 a drop. And I said, okay. And he said, you're supplying the wire? He goes, yeah. I said, he goes, well, we get set up with him. By this point, I had to go get some insurance because I became a vendor for them. And so I had to go get some liability insurance, and I had to get workman's comp and all this crap. It was a nightmare. And So went back, we wired that building. They supplied all the wire, and I've supplied all the telephones. It was a pretty successful project. And then we ended up, let's see what else happened after that. We went to, we finished that project, and then the electrician called me. He says, "Hey man, I got some more of these apartment complexes. Are you interested in them?" I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "I got one in the Jackson area." I said, "Okay, we can do that." And it was a little bit easier. It wasn't 3 or 4 stories high on everything. So we did that one, and then the more we did, the more we figured out. The simpler we got smarter with everything we did. We pull all the home runs, drop them off, make sure we just run them straight up through the floor and loop them through a box. And we really figured it all out. Leave a big old bundle of wire outside where all was tied in. Ring them out. We had to do that. Then we turned around and went to did the same thing with the TV. And then the cable company called me up one day. He says, "Can you drill under a road?" I was like, "No, not that I know of." I said, "I don't have the equipment for that." He said, no, he didn't ask me to drill. He said, "Could I?" Yeah, he did. He wanted me to drill under something. I said, "No, but I'll find out." So I Googled it back then, or Yahoo'd it probably. Said, I went to, golly, where we go? I went over to the Vermeer place and said, "Man, I need to drill up on the road for the cable company." And they went out there and showed me this little rig you pull behind a 1-ton truck, and had a tank. It was all self-contained. It's $150,000. I thought, oh my God, I've never paid $150,000 for anything in my life. I'm like scared the shit out of me. And I said, "Got anything a little cheaper?" He goes, "Yeah, we got this thing called a hammerhead mold." And he said, "What you do is you run an air compressor, and you hook it up to this oiler to the air compressor, and you put oil in it, and you put this on a 50-foot hose, and you can shoot 50 feet, and you aim it." I said, "How much?" He said, $4,000. I said, "I can do that." So I bought that thing, rented an air compressor, went out. Man, I made so much money with that stitch boring. I got good at it too. I could dig a hole, and we did everything by hand. We didn't have a mini X or anything. I could dig a hole and then go 100 feet and hit that same hole, dig another hole where it's big enough for that torpedo to get out of there. And it was just displacement. It just pound, pound, pound. Every time it pounded, it just pushed a hole through. It put a smooth 2-inch hole through the hole in the ground. If it was short enough under a driveway or something, you could see daylight. If you got down there. I made enough money off of that to go buy a wore-out 7-Eleven drill rig, and I didn't even know how to crank it, but I knew I could make some money with it. And so from there we started drilling. Next thing you know, I'm working for AT&T, putting fiber in the ground. I got 3 or 4 wore out. I go to auction and buy a wore out 2440 with pipe. Hopefully I'd get a drill head, and we would go and we would start leapfrogging those rigs. We were doing 15-20 mile runs of fiber. We were running them in 30, 45 days. They were bringing in, $300,000 or $400,000 for the job. It was all turnkey. We had to run the pipe. We had to drill the pipe in, and we had to pull the fiber in, set the hand holes, do all the grounding and all that. So it was a lot involved in it. So, and in 2008, the housing crisis hit, and you'd think being you have all your eggs in one basket with AT&T, you'd be in pretty good shape. No, they quit doing all the long fiber runs, and they tried to give me some piecework, but I just wasn't. I couldn't put those big rigs in a neighborhood. Did too much damage to the ground, and you're replacing sod. That shit ain't cheap. And so we ended up going to. We ended up having some other customers there, but not enough to sustain the growth that we had experienced. I scaled too high and put all my eggs in one basket. That was one of the things I was going to talk about in this little series. But I did it fast. It was pretty quick. It ended up running up some debt. It wasn't a whole lot of debt, but it was debt to it because I was I was buying those rigs for $20,000-$30,000 that, you know, have 5,000 hours on them, and you need to fix a 2440 on the side of the road. I was your man. Me and the mechanic from Vermeer were like best friends. Every time I saw him, I gave him $100 because he answered my call every time I talked to him. So with that being said, we ended up getting into getting out of it, and then I ended up working, going into the hydrovac business. Hey, I'm gonna cut it off. I got to go open up my auction house right now. I'll come back. We'll get another one. It's about 25 minutes. So uncut, uncensored. If you would follow us, like us. Got any questions? Put it in the comments, or you contact us and all that kind of stuff. Thank y'all and have a good day, and we'll be back on. We'll do another video here in probably a couple days. Thank you very much.